What's up everybody, it's George back again with Warp Charge Gaming. I'm excited to show you the second pod that I was able to compete in at the Nova Open 2018 for the first official Kill Team tournament with the new release of the game. Here you will see me going through my second pod of the event. I had already put up a video showing the first pod that I actually qualified in the top 16 for. So I hope you enjoy the video. Stay tuned for more to come, including the finals. Here's my Death Guard kill team. I did have a command roster of up to 20 models, but I found myself not wanting to ever switch out my loadout. I didn't even really think to do so, as I really feel like this is the most optimized choice for the way that I intended to play this warband to the mission. So this kill team here, these are Age of Sigmar Blight King models. 4 out of the 5 Death Guard are. And then the 3 Pox Bringers are actually Plague Bearers. I thought the models looked cooler. And the Nurgle are pretty good at being able to count as they're so nurgly. So what you're seeing here, the 2 models on the outsides, the left and right, you see the holes in their bellies. Those are my gunners. Those are Plague Marine gunners that are both using Blight launchers. The one with the red belly is my demo specialist. The Blight launcher is strength 6, -2, and D3 damage, rerolling 1s to wound. So a very deadly weapon. And then in the middle there, so on both the left and right side of my leader, you're seeing my Zealot and Combat Specialist. The Zealot in the light green and the Combat in the dark green. They both have the Flails of Corruption, which also in combat is strength 6, -2, and 2 damage auto. Now they get D3 attacks for every attack they make. So the Zealot, when it charges, gets 3d3 attacks, and then the Combat Specialist has 3d3 attacks default built in. All the Death Guard, of course, are toughness 5 with a 3-up armor save, and then have a 5-up disgustingly resilient save in case they get any wounds past their armor. The leader in the center has a plasma pistol and plague sword so that he can reroll a wound, and then the 3 Pox Bringers there are to be able to capture objectives, use the Cloud of Fly tactic, and get my combat up the field, or just soak up Overwatch before I send in a more vital one of my models. What's up everybody? Here you see me going into the Saturday morning kill team pod against my first opponent, Jacob. He was playing Adeptus Astartes with a force of Primaris Marines against my Death Guard. In the morning pods at Nova Open, the mission packet played 1 through 3, and in the afternoon pods, they were doing missions 4 through 6, which I thought was cool. So we start out here with the first mission in the packet, Vital Supplies. There's 5 objectives placed in an X format, 1 in the center and 4 kind of centered in each quarter or sector of the board. It is a 6-inch deployment zone on the long edge of the board. And we both choose our sides and begin to place. So, as per usual, I put my Poxwalkers down first to give them the least amount of opportunity to counter-deploy to my decisions, and giving me the most chances to put my fighters and gunners down in a way that best suits going after his placements. In each of the Nova Open missions, there is 5 secondaries to choose from, as well as 1 additional one that is specific to the mission. In this case, both opponents will choose 3 out of the 6 possible secondary objectives that can be scored up to 3 times apiece throughout the mission. So getting a max of 9 points through the game, or a max of 9 primary points to go along with it. So in order to score primaries, you get 1 point for holding 1 objective, 2 for holding 2, and you can get 3 if you hold more than the opponent. And so we both secretly choose these secondaries. I choose the mission-specific one called Mission Critical Supplies. At the end of the battle round, I can get a victory point if I control the center objective. This is good because it gives a dual purpose. I know that I'm going to be trying to get more objectives than him anyways. We both have 2 objectives in front of our deployment zone, so that's an easy score. So I want to fight for the center to get more points, and I might as well get that additional bonus point for that secondary there. Additionally, I chose Called Shot to kill with a ready model, and Cut Apart to kill in the fight phase. These are 2 things that my army is designed to do and works well with the secondaries that are throughout the different missions. So we both place, and then Death Guard wins the initiative. The first thing I do is roll a 6 to advance the Poxwalker in the center. I drive him straight across the board directly in front of his Marines and make it an easy charge bait. I go right up the middle. My intention is for him to charge it and then play Cloud of Flies on my Combat or Zealot that I run right up the center of the board along with it. And that way, being that the Poxwalker is in combat, it'll be the closest visible model, and he won't be able to target my fighters that I need to survive.
So I follow up with my combat specialist. He's able to advance all the way up to the central objective in the center ruin there. The Zealot, he gets a short advance, and I try to go ahead and use that to just hide at the corner of that ruin. I move to the objectives with my Poxwalkers on the left and right side of the board, and I use on my Blight Launchers, I go ahead and ready. Once he moves to follow suit, he does not choose to charge the Poxwalker bait, which was good on him. But once he moves about and positions himself for the shooting phase, I go ahead and play Cloud of Flies at the end of the movement to protect my combat specialist in the center on the objective. No matter what, I want that guy to live, as well as not only to be able to fight in the next round, but as well as to hold that objective, of course. So as we go into the shooting, being that I had the initiative, I get the first shot with my Demolition Specialist. I failed to wound my Demo Specialist, though. Although watching back on the back end here, I see that I actually didn't count my +1 to wound against the obscured target and would have actually got one after all. But not to worry. He fires at my Poxwalker, who is blocking my combat specialist on the objective in the center with the Cloud of Flies, and he puts a flesh wound on it, but does not get a kill, which of course is great for me, meaning I have another opportunity to avoid being shot with my combat specialist on the objective. I return fire from my readied regular gunner in the mid-center of the board there, and I fire up the board to his gunner that is peeking out of the corner of the upper right ruin and fail to hit, unfortunately. Need 5. It's a long shot and obscured. He rapid fires into my Demolition Specialist from 3 other gunners and wounds, but I make all the armor saves, to his sadness. With his last shots, he kills the Poxwalker I moved to the upper center. We end turn 1 with me having 3 objectives to his 2, and I score the secondary for holding center, making the score 4-2. I get 3 for holding more than him, he gets 2 for holding 2 objectives, and then I get 1 additional for getting my secondary for holding the center objective. So we start the beginning of turn 2, 4-2, Death Guard's favor. He spent no command points in the first round, so this brings him up to 4 command points and me at 2 at the start of turn 2. In turn 2, Death Guard wins the initiative again. This time I take my specialist that's on the center objective, and I go ahead and charge right into his specialist, his combat specialist. I ready both of my gunners as I'm continuing to try to get the called shot. And now that I've gone ahead and left the center objective with my Zealot, I go ahead and simply just move up my combat specialist to the center objective to continue to hold it. Due to the way he's placed, I'm able to get to that objective and still avoid quite a bit of line of sight from most of his guns. He attempts to make a charge with one of his fighters in the combat that I made with my Zealot to help support. Unfortunately, he rolls a 7 and fails the charge. He needs a 9. He goes ahead and uses a command point, going down to 3 command points for the turn, to re-roll the dice, and he lands the charge, so good for him. He attempts to charge with another Reaver, needing a 9, and as well as like he did the first time, but this time he fails and has no re-roll that he can be used in the same phase. So he goes ahead and readies his sniper. He brings the rest of his gunners into line of sight. I begin the shooting phase with a ready model due to me having the greatest strategic advantage, or the initiative, if you will.
I shoot with my regular gunner first.
I hit my target, I get the wound, I roll D3 on the damage, and I get a 3. So this gives me 3 dice on the injury roll. This made it pretty easy to hit the 5, and I removed him from action. This gets me my called shot for killing with a readied model. He shoots back with his readied sniper, spending another command point to add +1 to hit with a sniper specialist tactic. He hits and lands the 5+ to wound. The weapon does -2 AP, but I land my 5+ save and shut it down. I shoot back with my other gunner, needing 5s to hit for a long shot and obscurity, and nail a 5 and a 6 to hit. Then I drop double 6s on the wounds, rolling hot. He needs 5+ saves, but he makes them both. So a little tit for tat there. I then have no other shooting, and he continues with the rest of his shots. Unfortunately, he whiffs with his auxiliary grenade launcher against my demo specialist. He shoots the Poxwalker with a heavy bolt pistol, and I land the 5+ on the Disgusting and Resilient, keeping me on the objective in the bottom left there. I had every part of me believing he was saving 2 command points to fight first in our combat with my Zealot and combat specialists versus leader and fighter, but he did not choose to use any tactics at the start of the phase. I did override combat to fight first with my non-charging model, so that my charging model with initiative would then go next. I roll for 6 attacks and put them all into his Primaris. I give him 2 wounds, he saves 1, and the other goes through, which the weapon does 2 damage, reducing him to 0 wounds. I land the 4 on the injury and take him out of action, which gets me another cut apart secondary. With my next attack, it's versus the fighter through some ruins, and it requires a 5 on the injury due to him being obscured in the fight. I roll double 4s and he just takes a flesh wound, but I get my main target and I'm happy. The judge actually lets us know after we played this situation in this way. He was observing from afar and looked it up, but the injury roll is actually not affected by obscurity in combat. It's only from shooting and psychic. So while it is -1 to hit when fighting through a piece of terrain in combat, it is not a modifier to the injury roll like it is in shooting and psychic. My opponent was super cool and things were going my way. I was making the charges. We decided to just roll with it the way we played it and we kept it moving. He took that flesh wound. At the end of turn 2, I have 3 objectives to his 2 again, so I score 3 for having more and he gets 2 for the primary. I get my mission secondary for having the middle objective once further, and I'm scoring pretty good on him at this point. So we go into round 3. This time the Adeptus Astartes gets the initiative. I spend 1 command point to do a decisive move to charge him before the round really begins here. He decides he needs to match me. He wins the roll off and he charges me before I charge him with his combat specialist. He makes it with a 9. Being he took my charge, I simply move my leader to the objective, just as the only move that I would have done, anyways. And now that he did what I wanted to do. In the shooting, he sends a crack grenade to my demolition specialist again with his auxiliary grenade launcher. And he's shooting with his demolition specialist as well, giving him a +1 to wound. And so he's getting excited, but unfortunately he whiffs, getting a 3 to hit when he needs a 4. And then he shoots with his next ready model and he misses again. So he's getting some poor rolls. I fire back with my demolition specialist. I land the hit and the wound. And then I do 3 damage on the D3 result, taking the Primaris to 0 wounds, letting me roll 3 on the injury, and getting to get those good odds, and I land that 5 on the injury table again, taking him out of action. Which again scores me another called shot for the round for killing with a ready model. In our ongoing combat in the upper center, he pistol shots with the combat that was continuing, but he also whiffs that. Being that toughness 5 there, he couldn't land the wound. He gets to go first with his charging combat specialist that he did the decisive move with. He gets 5 attacks and needs 5 to wound. He gets several hits, but he fails all the wound rolls. He then fights me in the ongoing combat with his leader, being that he had the initiative. He spends a command point to do a death to traitors and tries to get extra attacks on 6s to hit. But then he only gets 1 hit out of the 3 and no 6s at that. And then with that 1 hit, he fails to get the 5 to wound. Once again, toughness 5 coming in handy. So I fight back. I roll D3 attacks versus leader. I get 7 attacks. My Death to the False Emperor is a natural ability and goes off on 3 6s. So I get to make even extra attacks. I end up wounding 4 times and he saves all but 1. But that one that goes through does 2 damage and reduces him to 0. So I get to roll and get the kill on the injury table. My other fighter, he goes and gets 3 D3 attacks versus the other fighter engaged in the combat that the leader was just killed from. I get the wound, but roll double 1s on the injury table. I use my last command point to reroll a dice, and then I land a 5 and get the kill there as well. This scored me another secondary for killing in the fight phase. I also got my final point for holding the center. It maxes out at 3 per secondary, and I maxed my primary for holding more objectives 3 turns in a row, so I went up to 9 there. So I have a pretty decisive lead going into turn 4. In turn 4, I win the initiative, and I charge his last model on the board with my combat specialist. I then charge my zealot to double up on it. I fail the charge, but I CP roll it, and I fail that too. We go immediately to combat because there's no one else to shoot anywhere. I get 6 attacks on the 3d3 attacks. I only land 2 hits and 2 wounds. He fails to save, and I get the kill with making a total victory. So that was the game, guys. It was pretty brutal. He was rolling pretty rough. I was rolling pretty hot. That cloud of flies in the beginning of the game, that got my combat and zealot where they needed to be the most effective. If you can get those flails in, then you're going to rip things apart. So I hope you enjoyed the match. Let's move on to the second.
The game ends 17-4. What you're seeing now is Game 2. This is called Pivotal Point, the second mission in the Nova Open Kill Teams packet. This mission has 6 objectives. They're basically lined up along the long edges of the board. There's one in each center of each quarter there, and then one in the middle about 3 inches off the long edge. This has a search and destroy style deployment with a 12-inch circle in the center. This makes about a 6-inch half circle from the center point of the board from each deployment zone. In this matchup, I'm going against a nice player named Connor, and he has brought Heretic Astartes, one of the more difficult factions to play, I would say. We both set up our models. I follow the usual trend of doing my poxwalkers first. And once again in this mission, it follows the same format of there being 6 total objectives, 5 that are pretty universal throughout the packet, and 1 that is mission specific. We each have to pick 3 of these secondaries worth up to 3 points apiece for a total of 9 maximum points, as well as, of course, 9 primary points, scoring 1 if you hold 1 objective, 2 if you hold 2, 3 if you hold more than the opponent. Watching on the back end here, it looks like we actually did not place the 2 centralized objectives, which is bad on us. So we only played a 4 out of 6 objective mission. These are the kind of things that happen at the tournament, and neither of us noticed. But hey, I don't think it played much effect in the game, actually, as we go along here. Let's watch what happens. So we both place all our models. He places pretty centrally, as do I. I'm actually pretty fortunate. He wins the initiative and goes first, which puts him on the forward movement, getting himself closer within my proximity for the turn 1 charges. He moves his flamer into the center of the ruin within a very short distance to me. I take advantage of him not being able to see my poxwalker when it is my turn to move at the corner of the ruin, and I charge with that model. Unfortunately, he can't see me, so he doesn't get overwatch, and I make the charge without much effort. I then, now that the overwatch has been taken up, with the poxwalker charging in, I charge safely in with my combat specialist next. It's only a 6-inch charge, and he makes it without much struggle. I then charge my zealot into a gunner unit of his, but I fail the roll. I use a reroll and try again, but I still fail once more. But I take the failed charge movement to move just up to the corner of that ruin there, as it was within the straight distance that I needed to travel. I advance my poxwalker of the board, crossing into the upper right corner. I take my poxwalker in the bottom center, and I charge his gunner on the objective that he moved to on the left side of the board. If anything, just attempting to contest. He fires a heavy bolter into my demolition specialist. He lands the wound, but I make my save. I fire my demo specialist in return to the model in the open, but I fail to hit. With the rest of his shooting, he actually whiffs his shots, unfortunately. I ask if he wishes to use a command point at the start of the combat to give him that opportunity to fight with his flamer first. He does not choose to fight first in this instance. I roll 7 attacks with my combat specialist, get 4 hits, and I put down 3 wounds. He fails his 5+ saves. The weapon does 2 damage. I roll 2 dice in the injury table, and I get the out of action and take him out. Next, I fight with my poxwalker on the left side of the board. I get the hit, but I fail to wound. He fights back, and he lands a wound. I fail my 5+ disgusting, but use my last command point and re-roll it, sticking to 5, contesting the objective. It was worth a command point re-roll because I wanted to make sure to hold that objective and deny it from him. Otherwise, he would have scored more than me. At the end of turn 1, we each only hold 1 objective, and we each get 1 primary point for doing so. I'm up to 3 points to his 1 due to the secondaries that I scored. Killing in the fight phase and achieving my headlong assault, making 3 charges this round. In turn 2, he wins the initiative, and this is my chance to do a decisive move. He pays the command point to roll off and tries to deny the move, but I win the roll off and I charge my zealot into his, getting me the extra attack and the priority in combat. With the rest of his movement, he goes ahead and retaliates by having his leader charge both my poxwalker and the zealot that I had just charged into his, and then he makes the charge roll. He then charges my poxwalker with his marine from midboard that is contesting the objective on the left side. With my other fighter who creeped up the center ruin on the last turn, I make a multi-charge against 3 targets, with the move to either charge into the 2 fighters that are in the middle there with my zealot engaged, or if I can get the long bomb to charge all the way up to that objective in the top right and be able to kill and hold that objective. I failed the long bomb, but I do make enough to go to the center field combat against the leader, where it's now pretty much overkill with both the Zealot and the Combat Specialist. Good thing is now both my Combat and my Zealot are safe from any shooting. In the shooting, he fires his top left gun and misses the shot. I thought I had a shot with my Demolition Specialist when I readied him in the bottom center, but it didn't appear so when I lined it up, so I kept it moving. He throws his heavy bolter into the Poxwalker that was engaged with the Flamer in the last round of combat. He gets the wound through and rolls just a flesh wound, but then he uses a reroll to land the kill. I then used my other regular gunner with his Blight Launcher. He jumped over the wall in the bottom right for a line of sight at his gunner on the objective in the upper left corner. I land a hit and then a wound, and I roll 3 on the D3 damage, exactly what I was hoping for, giving me 3 chances on the injury roll, needing a 5 because of his obscurity. I do land that 5, and I take him out of action and off that objective, which was a big kill. Next, the Marine that was on the objective engaged with the Poxwalker on the left-hand side. He goes ahead and fires a pistol shot into me. He gets the wound. I fail my save, but he only causes a flesh wound, unfortunately for him. So we move on. Into the combat, he chooses to fight with his leader, first against the Zealot and Combat Specialist that he ganged up on. He gets 3 attacks, but with 5s to wound, he fails to wound me. I retaliate back with my charging model. I get 7 attacks with my Combat Specialist. I split the attacks between the 2 models that I'm engaged with. I put 4 on the leader and 3 on the other fighter. I managed to land the wounds, and he fails his saves, and I get the kill on the injury table against the leader. The other 3 attacks go into the other model I was engaged with that I charged in my decisive move. I roll on the injury table after getting successful hits and wounds, but I fail to get the kill roll. I re-roll with the command point and still fail, just giving him a flesh wound. My other charger piles into the remaining fighter and gets another 3d3 attacks. I end up landing 3 wounds. He fails to save. I only needed 3 to take him out of action due to the flesh wound, and I make it so. He then kills my Poxwalker in combat with his Marines in the left corner. At the end of the round, he's had enough losses and flesh wounds on the board that he has to take a broken test, but he passes. By the end of turn 3, I score all 3 of my secondaries, 1 for charging with 3 models, another for killing in the fight phase, and finally I get a prey on the weak for killing that model with a flesh wound. But I am only on 1 objective at the end of the round to his 1 objective, so we both get another single point on the primary. I go up to 6 points to his 3. On turn 3, I win the initiative. I start by charging his Marine. He retreats to the back objective, which was a solid move. I re-roll my failed charge with a command point to try to make that 9 inches, and I still fail with the re-roll. I advance my Poxwalker towards the upper left objective. I then charge my other fighter, and I also fail that charge as well. I advance my Blight Launcher up to the objective, knowing his model has retreated and it won't be able to shoot me. Now I'm contesting, and I plan to kill him with my shooting. My weapon is Assault, so I will still just be a -1 to hit, looking for 4s. I feel like the odds are pretty good, and he won't have much retaliation. In the beginning of the shooting, he spends 2 command points to do a decisive shot to try to shoot before my ready models. My Demolition Specialist is eyeing targeting both the Marines on the objective in the bottom left. He lands 2 hits with a double 6, but he only lands 1 wound on a 5+ because he's just using a bolter. I make my save with a 3+ armor. I fire back, splitting my 2 shots with my Demolition Specialist in the bottom center between the 2 heretics on the objective on the left. I wound with my first shot. It goes through and does 2 damage on the D3 damage result. I then get the kill on the injury. I wound the second Marine on the other shot, but this time I roll only a 1 on the damage amount. I only put on a flesh wound. I use my last command point to try and re-roll the injury to get the kill, and still just cause a flesh wound. I then shoot his retreated Marine with my other Blight Launcher that I moved just in front of him. And this time, I land the hit, land the wound, take it out of action. He only has 1 model left on the bottom left-hand side of the board on that objective. And because he has a flesh wound, at the end of the round, he has to auto-break because all of his models are dead and the only one on the board has a flesh wound. He rolls a shaken test and needs a 1 to pass, and what do you know? He lands it. By the end of turn 3, I've now scored more objectives than him, getting 3 on the primary to his 1, and neither of us scored any secondaries that round. On turn 4, he wins the initiative. He readies his final model. I make a 9-inch charge after a command point reroll because I failed the first try. I put a bunch of attacks in and wound, and then I roll on that injury table, I get the final kill. I score my prey on the weak because it had a flesh wound. I also get 3 more additional points in the primary for having more than he did at the end of the round, making the final score 14-5. All right, this is game 3. This is the final match in the Saturday morning Kill Team pod. I'm going against a awesome player that's a lot of fun named Brian. He brought us Astra Militarum. We're playing the Ruin by Ruin mission. This is where there's 5 ruins on the board that are each worth points for holding the ruin with the most wounds within. So same situation. They count as objectives. Hold 1 ruin, it's worth 1. Hold 2, it's worth 2. Hold more than your opponent, it's worth 3. And then once again, there's 6 objectives that we both secretly choose 3 from that are worth up to 3 points apiece throughout the mission. That makes a total of 9 secondary points, and there's a max of 9 primary points to be scored. So we begin the game. We do the deployment. You know, you can see the same deployment by me as usual. I put the 3 Poxwalkers down first. He has quite a few bodies this time. I'm relieved to hear he only has a couple of plasma shots, as I've been warned about the plasma spam of the Astra Militarum. And I make sure to find out where those plasma guns are, as they are the most significant guns that can take on my toughness 5. Otherwise, he took a lot of regular las shots. The secondaries that I chose were Called Shot to kill with a ready model, Headlong Assault to make 3 charges in a round, and finally Prey on the Weak to kill a model with a flesh wound. So when we begin the game, he wins the roll-off on initiative. This happened a few times to me throughout the weekend. You can see it in some other battles. I am happy to lose the first turn roll because I am hoping that they do a move towards the center to give me a better chance of making some turn 1 charges, and that's exactly what went down here as well. He was still at a pretty far distance. As you'll see, it works out in my favor. So he moves his models to take control of the ruins on his side of the board, and then he moves up into the center ruin to fortify that and try to be able to score more than me by the end of the round by having more objectives. So when it's my turn to move, the first thing that I do is I attempt to charge one of his flamers on the left side of the board, being that he can't see my Poxwalker hiding behind that ruin there in the bottom left. He does a retreat move and falls back since he doesn't have the opportunity to overwatch. Which makes me fail my charge, but I still take the failed charge distance and move into the ruins to help secure that objective. I poke my leader's head around the corner there to try to get a shot in with my plasma pistol. My Poxwalker in the center, he tries to make a charge straight down the middle. It's a 9-inch charge, just within 10. I fail the charge, but I take the 6 inches and move into the center objective, putting 1 body within. I then try to charge again with my next model in line there, the combat specialist, and this time I hit it with a big 10. And this roll right here is literally a major factor to the way the game swings from here. I make another charge with my Zealot, but this time I fail. I even re-roll with a command point, because why not? The charge still fails, but I use the 6-inch distance to move in a straight line up the board, which puts me in base to base to the corner of that ruin and helps give me some line of sight blocking. The Poxwalker in the bottom right, it goes ahead and advances up the right side of the board. The Poxwalker in the bottom right, I go ahead and advance into that ruin, jumping over the wall to help secure that point, and kind of take a chance by making that the only body in the ruin, figuring that he has more of a target priority to worry about, and I leave my demo specialist in a ready position. In shooting, he has no readies, while I have both my blight launchers ready to shoot. So this gives me priority with 2 of my big guns here. I land 2 5+ to hit right out the gates, and I wound and do 2 damage on the D3. Then I roll and I land the kill and the injury, giving me Called Shot of my first shot, which is the secondary for killing with a ready model. I shoot with my other readied gunner. I nail double 6s for my 5+ hits, and then I wound and nail another 5 on the injury roll. So that was 2 kills immediately before he even begun shooting. Pretty demoralizing, especially after making that 10-inch charge. He shoots back with his flamer and removes my Poxwalker from the bottom left ruin. He had many flamers. I failed to hit with my leader with the plasma pistol, and I had no other guns, so he shoots what he had left. He shoots his plasma shot next with a sniper, but he fails to hit. He re-rolls with a command point and fails again. We then go into combat. On my big long bomb charge into his melt-a-gun holding the center ruin. I give him 5 wounds to save on 6s with the -2 AP. I get those through and I take him out of action on the injury roll. So at the end of turn 1, I managed to kill 3 models. I have 2 ruins that are mine, and he has only 1 because my gunner killed the guys that were scoring one of the objectives on the top right, and I score 3 for having more to his 1. On turn 2, Death Guard wins the initiative this time. First thing I do is I charge another flamer with my combat specialist that had made that long bomb up the middle. He wounds, and I fail my saves against the Overwatch, but luckily for charging from obscurity, he needed a 5+ on the injury table and only rolled a 4, and I just take a flesh wound. I make the charge on a 6, and there I am. So I decided I need to go ahead and fortify that bottom left ruin there. I definitely highly believe that's super important in these missions to be able to score more than your opponent, or at least match. So it was worth risking my leader, especially after the heavy killing that I had done right off the gates. So I moved my leader in to the ruin on the bottom left, and then I went ahead and advanced my regular gunner to take position in front of the leader to add a little bit of extra protection with the obscurity. Knowing that he had assault weapons, I knew I would still get a shot, even though he had advanced. At a -1, but hey. So this time in the shooting phase, he had 2 readied models to shoot. So he shoots first his flamer on the left side of the board. He gets a wound in, but I save it with a 3+ armor. He shoots me with his other flamer. I fail my armor, and I fail again on a CP reroll, but then I hit my disgusting resilient to his dismay. Now it's my turn to shoot, and I fire with my blight launcher that advanced, that's in front of my leader in the left-hand ruin. I shoot at a target on the left with clear line of sight within half range, so then I'm only -1 for advancing. I land the hit, then the wound, and then I get the kill. He shoots and fails with his next shot. I then shoot my plasma pistol leader, and I also fail. He then shoots his plasma on my gunner. He gets the wound through, but only flesh wounds. I fire back at him, and I fail to hit. We then move on to the fight, where I charged him in the start. I gave him 5 wounds to go right through because he only has a 5+ save. I roll 2 in the injury because it's a 2 damage weapon, and I pop the 4 for the kill. At the end of the turn, he has several models shake from breaking at the end of the round, unfortunately. And I score for having 3 for having more, and he only scores 1. So starting to get a pretty substantial lead here and broke his army at the end of turn 2. At the start of turn 3, he wins the initiative. He falls back further into the ruins in the top left there. I ready all my models, and being the only one with ready models, I shoot first. I cause a flesh wound with my first blight launcher. My plasma pistol shoots next and causes a second flesh wound, and then finally my demo specialist shot and lands the wound, gets the kill, which gets me a called shot for killing with a ready model and prey on the weak for killing something with a flesh wound. In the morale phase, he auto passes with his leader, and the rest unfortunately all fail their nerve tests and shake. I score 3 for holding more, maxing my primary at the end of turn 3. On turn 4, I win the initiative. I ready all my guns again. I fortify the objectives where needed. I don't bother messing with any charges as the game is pretty much under control. I kill 1 of his wounded models in the shooting, getting another prey on the weak. I fire across the board with a long bomb shot with my demo specialist. I land the hit, I land the wound, and then insult to injury. I roll a 6 on the injury roll and get another kill and called shot, tabling him off the board. This game ends 15-3.
All right, everybody, if you made it this far, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video. The opponents that I had were awesome to play. Nova Open was amazing, and playing kill teams in a major event was exhilarating, and I had an extreme amount of fun. So I hope to see you at the next event, whether it's one we're throwing, you're throwing, or one of these majors from across the globe. And I hope you stay tuned to watch more of Warp Charge Gaming. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell for the notification so you know when we go live. We do it all the time, sometimes fairly random at this moment still, as we're growing our sea legs out there. And we have giveaways all the time and things of that nature. So just check out the channel, see what we got going on. There's lots of different types of content. We go live every Thursday at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time with a talk show where you can tune in and chat with us, etc. So yeah, hope you enjoy. Would love to hear from you, know what you think, and keep taking fun seriously.